Javier Torres adjusted the faded strap of his canvas backpack as he approached the sleek, sunlit building of the University of Southern California's Mathematics Department. At 28, he stood out among the throng of students rushing to their classes. Their designer sneakers and branded hoodies, a stark contrast to his plain gray t-shirt and worn jeans. His fingers tugged at the frayed hem of his shirt, a nervous tic he'd carried since childhood. "You've got this," he muttered under his breath, brushing a lock of dark hair from his forehead. As a part-time cashier at a family-owned taqueria in East Los Angeles, Javier had never imagined setting foot in a place like this. His life revolved around early morning shifts, helping his tia with the restaurant's books, and late nights solving math problems on a second-hand laptop. The opportunity had come out of nowhere. A university outreach program scouting untapped mathematical talent through online coding and problem-solving platforms. For years, Javier had buried his love for mathematics. While coworkers at the taqueria swapped stories over lunch, he'd hunch over his phone, tackling calculus problems. At night, after balancing the restaurant's accounts, he'd dive into math forums, solving equations that baffled graduate students. The program is highly competitive. Dr. Elena Vargas had told him over a crackly Zoom call last month. "But your solutions to our online challenges were exceptional. We'd like you to audit advanced courses, with a potential fellowship if you excel." Javier had almost said no. Who was he, a guy with a community college GED and no formal degree, to sit among USC's elite? But the same spark that drove him to master partial differential equations from borrowed library books pushed him to accept. His reflection flickered in the building's tinted glass doors. Scuffed sneakers, a faded shirt, nothing that screamed, math prodigy. Just a regular guy with a mind that saw patterns where others saw chaos. He squared his shoulders and pushed open the door, stepping into a world he'd only glimpsed in YouTube lectures. The halls buzzed with talk of vector fields and Fourier transforms, students clutching glossy textbooks Javier had only read as grainy PDFs. "Room 214, he murmured, glancing at a crumpled printout of the campus map. "Advanced Multivariable Calculus with Dr. Catherine Lin." Even Javier knew her name. Her textbook, Foundations of Higher Dimensional Analysis, was stacked on his nightstand, its pages marked with pencil notes. Dr. Lin was a titan in mathematics, brilliant, exacting, and, according to Reddit threads, ruthless to those she deemed unprepared. He found the lecture hall and hesitated at the door, his pulse racing. Inside was the world he'd dreamed of, but never believed he could join. Now or never, he told himself and stepped inside. The room fell quiet as Javier entered. Rows of students in trendy athleisure and tailored jackets turned to stare. His thrift store outfit felt like a neon sign announcing he didn't belong. He slid into a seat near the front, ignoring the curious glances. A guy in a Patagonia vest shifted slightly away, as if Javier's presence might disrupt his focus. "Is this seat free?" Javier asked, keeping his voice steady. Yeah," the guy muttered, eyes flicking back to his MacBook. Javier unzipped his backpack and pulled out a spiral notebook, paper, not a tablet, and a handful of pens he'd collected from the taqueria. Around him, whispers floated like static. Outreach program, no degree, what's he doing here? He kept his gaze on his notebook, pretending not to hear. He'd faced judgment before. Customers at the taqueria assuming he was just the help. Teachers in high school dismissing him as unmotivated when he missed class to work. The lecture hall was sleek, with tiered seating and a digital whiteboard flanked by screens displaying equations. Framed photos of famous mathematicians, mostly white, mostly male, lined the walls, their names etched in silver. A girl with AirPods and a Prada backpack leaned toward her friend. "Dr. Lin's gonna shred him," she whispered. "She doesn't even let TAs talk without permission. $20 he's out before the bell," her friend replied with a smirk. Javier's grip tightened on his pen, but his face stayed neutral. If they knew how many nights he'd stayed up, solving Lin's toughest journal problems while the taqueria's neon sign flickered outside his window, they might not be so quick to bet against him. The side door opened, and the room went silent. Dr. Catherine Lin strode in, her dark hair in a tight ponytail, her navy blazer sharp enough to cut glass. Behind her trailed a younger man with a warm smile. Dr. Mateo Rivera, the one who'd recruited Javier. Dr. Lin set her tablet on the podium and scanned the room with eyes like a hawk's. When they landed on Javier, her lips twitched, a mix of curiosity and skepticism. "Welcome to Advanced Multivariable Calculus," she announced, her voice crisp as a snapped chalk stick. "For those who've earned their place, this course will push your limits. For others," her gaze lingered on Javier. "The ad drop deadline is Friday." The message was clear. Javier sat taller, refusing to flinch. He belonged here not by pedigree but by the one thing that mattered, his grasp of mathematics. He didn't know Dr. Lin had already decided to test him. 20 minutes into the lecture, Javier was hooked. Dr. Lin, for all her intensity, was a masterful teacher. Her breakdown of vector calculus was like a symphony, each concept flowing into the next. Javier scribbled notes, connecting her frameworks to the tricks he'd taught himself. Sometimes, he'd spot a pattern just before she explained it, a quiet thrill sparking in his chest. "We typically solve this type of partial differential equation," Dr. Lin said, projecting a complex formula onto the screen, "by applying a series of transformations to stabilize the variables." Javier nodded slightly, almost unconsciously. He'd found a faster way to handle these equations last year, after weeks of trial and error. His method cut through the clutter with a single clever substitution. "Something to share, Mr. Torres?" Dr. Lin's voice sliced through his thoughts. The room froze. Every eye turned to Javier, who realized his nod had caught her attention. "No, Dr. Lin," he said softly. "Just following along." Her eyebrow arched. "You find multidimensional boundary problems so trivial you're nodding like it's basic algebra?" Snickers rippled through the room. Dr. Rivera, leaning against the wall, frowned. "I didn't mean," Javier started. "Since you're so confident," Dr. Lin cut in, "why don't you solve the problem I was about to assign?" She tapped her tablet, and a new equation appeared on the screen. A tangle of integrals and variables that looked like a mathematical labyrinth. Javier's throat tightened. The equation wasn't impossible. He could see the path to the solution. But solving it on the spot, with 30 strangers judging him and Dr. Lin's stare boring into him, was another story. He hesitated. "As I expected," Dr. Lin said, turning back to the screen. "This program may open doors to those without credentials, but some gaps can't be bridged." Dr. Rivera stepped forward. "Catherine, maybe?" "No, Mateo," Dr. Lin snapped. "These students deserve rigor, not charity." She faced Javier, her eyes glinting with challenge. "Mr. Torres, I insist. Show us." The guy in the Patagonia vest whispered, "This is going to be brutal." Javier closed his notebook. The equation was tough, but familiar. It echoed problems from Lin's textbook, the one he'd bought used for $80, its pages worn from months of study. He stood, his sneakers quiet on the polished floor. The walk to the front felt like crossing a desert, every step heavy with doubt. Dr. Lin handed him a stylus for the digital whiteboard. Their eyes met, and Javier saw it. The certainty he'd fail, the readiness to use him as a warning to others. He turned to the screen, the equation glaring like a challenge carved in stone. "Whenever you're ready, Mr. Torres," Dr. Lin said, her tone laced with mock patience. "Or would you rather sit down?" Javier gripped the stylus. The equation was a beast, a multivariable integral with nested terms and a tricky boundary condition. He recognized it as a variant of a problem from Lin's textbook, but with an extra layer of complexity. The silence was deafening. He could feel Dr. Lin's presence, practically smug with anticipation. Someone shuffled papers. A phone buzzed faintly. "Today, Mr. Torres," Dr. Lin prompted.
Javier Exaled.
He knew this problem, not just the steps, but its essence. Nights spent puzzling over equations while his tia's radio played cumbia had given him an intuition that cut through textbook dogma. He started writing, his strokes deliberate. The first steps were standard, setting up the problem as any student would. But on the fourth line, he diverged, using a substitution that collapsed the nested terms into something simpler. Behind him, Dr. Rivera let out a soft huh. Javier kept going, his stylus gliding across the screen. He wasn't just solving, he was carving the most elegant path possible. Where the standard method dragged through 12 steps, his took 7. The room grew still. Whispers faded. The clicking of keyboards stopped. The entire class watched as this guy in a faded t-shirt unraveled a mathematical knot with the precision of a sculptor. 5 minutes in, Dr. Lin's heel tapped once, sharply. Javier paused to double-check his work mentally, then pushed forward, transforming the final terms with a flourish. The solution snapped into place, clean and undeniable. He boxed the answer and set the stylus down, the soft click loud in the silent room. He turned. Dr. Lin's smugness had vanished, replaced by a guarded expression. She stepped closer, scanning the solution, hunting for a mistake. Dr. Rivera approached the screen, his eyes tracing Javier's work. "This skips Alvarez's theorem entirely," he said, almost to himself. "How'd you find that substitution?" Javier shifted, hands in his pockets. "The structure reminded me of Ortiz's work on optimization. I figured if I used a modified elliptic substitution, the integrals would simplify." A girl in the front row leaned forward. "But that's not in Lin's book." "No," Javier said quietly. "I worked it out messing around with her practice problems." Dr. Lin's jaw tightened. She hadn't expected this, a solution that outshone the standard approach. The room held its breath, the air thick with a shifted dynamic. "An unconventional method," she said, her voice clipped. "Though such shortcuts can falter in broader applications." Javier didn't need her praise. The solution was correct, confirmed by Dr. Rivera's nod. "Can I sit?" he asked. Dr. Lin waved him off, already pivoting to the screen to reclaim her authority. But the room had changed. As Javier returned to his seat, the guy in the Patagonia vest scooted closer, leaving space. A small gesture, but it spoke volumes. 30 minutes later, Dr. Lin wrapped up the lecture. "Before we end," she said, her tone deliberate, "let's explore a problem that highlights the risks of unorthodox approaches." Her eyes flicked to Javier. She projected a new equation, far denser than the first, a multidimensional integral with a deceptive boundary condition. "Perhaps Mr. Torres would like another attempt," she said, framing it as a dare. Javier felt the room's attention shift again, but now there was curiosity, even expectation. The guy beside him whispered, "You got this, man." Dr. Rivera stepped forward. "Catherine, we're almost out of time. Maybe next session?" "I think Mr. Torres's talent deserves a second look," Dr. Lin replied smoothly. "Unless he finds it too daunting. It was a trap, back down and prove her right or tackle a problem designed to trip him up." Javier took the stylus. "I'll give it a shot," he said evenly. The equation was a monster, likely crafted to mislead. The obvious path would dead end. Javier started with the standard setup, then paused, stylus hovering. There was a symmetry buried in the chaos, easy to miss under pressure. Dr. Lin checked her watch. 2 minutes, Mr. Torres." Javier rewrote the problem in a new coordinate system, exposing the symmetry. Gasps rippled through the room as students saw his approach. He worked fast, transforming the integral into something solvable. Each step peeled back the problem's complexity, revealing its hidden elegance. Just as the bell rang, he boxed the answer and stepped back, catching his breath. Dr. Lin stared at the screen, her face a mask. She traced each step, searching for flaws. Dr. Rivera grinned. "That's incredible. You spotted the covariant transformation." Dr. Lin's voice was tight. "A novel approach." Class dismissed. The room erupted in murmurs as students packed up. Javier returned to his seat, a strange calm settling over him. "Dude, that was insane," said the Patagonia guy. "How'd you learn that with no degree?" Before Javier could respond, a girl across the aisle leaned over. "Can you break down that last transformation? I've never seen it." Suddenly, students who'd ignored him were circling, their faces lit with interest. Dr. Lin gathered her tablet, her movements sharp.
Doctor Rivera approached Javier.
Mr. Torres, can we talk in my office? We need to discuss your role in this program. The buzz followed Javier into the hall. Students lingered, watching as he spoke with Dr. Rivera near a window overlooking the campus's palm trees. What you did in there, Dr. Rivera said, was extraordinary. Your intuition for complex systems is unreal. Javier ran a hand through his hair, still processing. I just see the patterns, he said. Math's always been easier than people. Dr. Lin emerged from the classroom, her posture stiff. Spotting Javier, she approached. Torres, she said, her tone formal. Your performance was unexpected. It wasn't an apology, but there was a grudging respect. Thank you, Javier replied. Your second solution, she continued, used a transformation taught in graduate seminars. Where did you learn it? I didn't, Javier said, meeting her eyes. I figured it out working through your second textbook. The standard methods felt clunky. Dr. Lin's eyebrows lifted. For a moment, she saw him not as an outsider but as a mathematician. I see. I expect you'll keep up in my class. With a nod to Dr. Rivera, she walked away, her heels clicking on the tile. Dr. Rivera chuckled. From Catherine, that's high praise. As they discussed a potential fellowship, students passed by, some nodding at Javier. One stopped. There's a math club that meets Wednesdays in the library. You should come.
Javier blinked.
Maybe I will. By the time he left the building, word had spread. Students he didn't know glanced at him with curiosity. A professor did a double-take when Dr. Rivera called him by name. Javier knew one day didn't erase the challenges ahead, doubters, academic politics, the weight of being an outsider. But he'd proven himself in the spotlight, and it felt like a door had cracked open. Golden sunlight filtered through the campus's eucalyptus trees as Javier stepped outside. The quad was quiet, students heading to dinner or study groups. He paused on the steps, letting the day sink in. This morning, he'd walked in expecting to be dismissed. A cashier playing at math. Now, he had Dr. Rivera's promise of a fellowship application and an offer to submit his methods to a journal. His phone pinged with a text from his cousin at the taquería. How'd the math thing go? They scare you off yet? Javier grinned, unsure how to sum up the day. How do you describe the moment people stop seeing you as less and start seeing you as more? Went okay, he typed. Might be sticking around. As he headed to the bus stop, he saw Dr. Lin crossing the faculty lot. Their eyes met briefly. No words, but a flicker of recognition, not as an anomaly but as a peer. Javier kept walking, his steps lighter than they'd been in years. Today hadn't erased the barriers, class, race, the system that overlooked people like him. But it had shown what he'd always known. Ability didn't need a degree to shine. He belonged in this world of equations and proofs, and now others saw it too. Javier Torres' story reminds us that brilliance can rise from the most unlikely places. His journey from self-taught problem solver to recognized mathematician wasn't about fitting in. It was about proving that talent doesn't need permission. In a world quick to judge by appearances or credentials, Javier's triumph shows that true genius can rewrite the rules. If the story moved you, share it with someone who needs to know their potential matters, no matter where they come from. Sometimes the greatest minds wear the simplest clothes.